Welcome to Mystery Street. In this channel, we explore the strangest and most mysterious cases that defy all explanation. If you are ready to dive deep into the unknown, then you are in the right place. It was in the spring of 1957 when a strange man named Elias Verne appeared in the quiet town of Orlbine. No one knew where he came from, no passport, no records, no relatives, just a man with an unsettling calmness. He purchased house number 41, a dilapidated home at the edge of the neighborhood, and paid in cash without ever interacting with the neighbors. The curtains were always drawn. No lights, no sounds, just a shadowy silence. And then, the strange occurrences began. Each morning, a plain brown envelope would appear in his mailbox. No stamps, no addresses, just thick brown paper. Later, a child from the neighborhood tried to open the mailbox, and days after that, he vanished. His family left town silently. Rumors began spreading. Some said it was a haunted house. Others whispered that Elias Verne was cursed. The house sat abandoned for months, but in 1958, 3 men, an old priest, a journalist, and a real estate agent, entered house number 41, and they too disappeared without a trace. No signs, no bodies, no evidence. And this is where Detective Marcus Ray comes into the picture. In 1960, Marcus Ray, a young and ambitious investigator known for solving complex cold cases, was assigned to the case. Marcus set up a small investigative team, including a former detective, a psychological analyst, and a document specialist. They moved into a house across the street from number 41 and began surveillance. Days passed without any noticeable changes, but theories began to arise. Marcus was presented with different possibilities. Each of these theories would challenge his resolve and his belief in reality itself. The first theory, aliens. The first theory that Marcus received was that the house was a hotspot for alien activity. One night, a local resident sent him a video showing strange blue lights emanating from the house's sealed windows. Marcus dug deeper and discovered a journal left behind by the missing journalist. The journal contained cryptic symbols, diagrams of alien contact, and star charts. Marcus took the diagrams to astronomers who recognized them as ancient celestial maps. Yet, when Marcus presented this theory to his superiors, they laughed it off as absurd. Despite the dismissal, Marcus continued to investigate, reaching out to UFO experts, cryptographers, and anyone who might confirm his suspicion. Just as Marcus was getting closer to understanding the connection, the house went completely silent. No lights, no envelopes, no signs of Elias Verne. The neighborhood began to fear that the truth was even stranger than they had imagined. Challenge. Marcus's team faced skepticism from their own department. They struggled to prove the alien connection without solid evidence. And just when they thought they were on the brink of a breakthrough, everything went quiet, adding to the mystery. The second theory, a secret cult. The second theory suggested that the house was a meeting place for an ancient, secret cult. Several townspeople reported seeing figures in dark robes near the house at night. An old archive from a nearby church revealed records of a forgotten sect that believed house number 41 was the gateway to forbidden knowledge. Marcus attempted to obtain a warrant to search the house, but the request was denied due to lack of evidence. Undeterred, he decided to investigate on his own. When he broke into the house, he discovered strange carvings on the floor and a hidden book listing the names of missing people, all crossed out in red ink. Challenge. The secret cult theory led Marcus down a dark path of religious and occult practices, but the evidence remained thin. The authorities continued to deny his claims, and his team grew divided on whether they were chasing ghosts or something more sinister. The third theory, a genius with a broken mind. The third theory involved the possibility that Elias Verne was a reclusive scientist, someone who had turned the house into a labyrinth of hidden rooms and traps. Marcus found blueprints inside the house showing impossible architectural features. Rooms within rooms and walls that seemed to shift when you weren't looking. An engineer on Marcus's team was trapped inside one of these false hallways, and 2 other investigators left the case due to the growing fear that the house was alive, changing itself. Challenge. Marcus and his team tried to understand the house's architecture, but no matter how much they studied, they couldn't explain how the rooms shifted or why there were no clear answers. As they delved deeper into the house's design, the tension grew. Who could build such a place, and for what purpose? The 4th theory. A dimensional rift. As Marcus continued his investigation, he discovered something unsettling, a pattern. One of the brown envelopes contained a sequence of symbols that, when decrypted, spoke of transition, the crossing, and departure from the present time. The words seemed to suggest that the house was not a normal place, but rather a rift in reality itself. Marcus consulted with theoretical physicists, and they posited that the house might be a dimensional tear, a pocket where time and space collided, trapping those who entered. Challenge. Marcus's biggest challenge was trying to make sense of the scientific theory while dealing with his own growing unease. As time passed, people in the neighborhood began to report strange occurrences, such as seeing the same person twice in a row or hearing sounds that didn't belong to the house. The lines between dimensions seemed to blur. The 5th theory. Time travelers traps. Another theory emerged. Elias Verne was possibly a time traveler who had set up the house as a way to test various time loops. Some documents from Elias's past suggested he had an obsession with time manipulation and had conducted experiments to trap people in different eras. Marcus found research notes that indicated Elias had been researching temporal anomalies. The house's strange architecture, the secret rooms, and the missing people could all be explained if Verne had been attempting to use the house as a gateway to different times. Challenge. The team struggled with the implications of this theory. If time travel was involved, then how could they track Elias's movements across timelines? Was he still in the same time as them, or had he slipped into another era entirely? This question plagued Marcus for weeks. The 6th theory. A supernatural prison. Another unsettling theory suggested that Elias Verne had created a supernatural prison within the house, one where time and reality itself became twisted. People who entered were not merely trapped by walls, but by an otherworldly force that drained their life force. Some claimed to have seen strange shadows in the windows, figures that didn't belong. Marcus eventually found a hidden diary belonging to one of the missing men. The man wrote about hearing whispers in the dark, voices that seemed to speak to him from beyond the veil. Challenge. Marcus couldn't prove that supernatural forces were involved, but his growing fear and the testimonies from witnesses made him wonder if there was something more to the house than just physical anomalies. The 7th theory. Parallel universe. Finally, a new theory emerged. Perhaps Elias Verne had inadvertently created a bridge to a parallel universe, a reality where the laws of physics did not apply. In this universe, the people who entered the house were not dead, but instead existed in a parallel dimension where time and space were distorted. Challenge. Marcus and his team struggled to gather solid evidence, but as they dug deeper, strange occurrences began happening around them. Objects would disappear, people would seem to vanish in a secret human trafficking network. After reviewing the details of the case, the detective began to suspect that things might be more complicated than they appeared. By investigating the call logs, he discovered something odd. The calls made before the residents' disappearances came from unknown numbers, and the calls were repeated strangely between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. He examined the phones of the missing persons before they disappeared and used modern tracking tools to follow the calls. It turned out that the calls came from unknown lines and vanished without a trace. When he delved further into the investigation, he found that the calls ended in nowhere, meaning they weren't directed to known numbers. The detective started to believe that the house was being used for human trafficking. Perhaps it was a hideout for an underground network operating in secrecy. The mysterious calls pointed to operations being carried out in the shadows, possibly using the house as a hideout. The detective scrutinized the records of the missing people and found that most of them led normal lives and communicated with their families regularly. However, he began to notice something odd. Some of the missing individuals were linked to unknown social networks. Could these networks have been hiding a large conspiracy related to trafficking or secret experiments? Although he couldn't gather definitive evidence to support this theory, the mysterious numbers that appeared in the records along with the clues he had gathered made this possibility seem more plausible. A curse tied to the house. While researching the history of the house, the detective began noticing deep and eerie details. According to old documents, house number 14 had been built over the ruins of an old psychiatric hospital. This hospital had been overcrowded with mentally ill patients who had suffered severe trauma from harsh experiments carried out on them. In the previous century, the hospital was shut down after a tragic incident, and the property remained vacant for many years before being turned into a residence. The detective also discovered that some patients at the hospital had been known for performing strange rituals, especially spiritual rituals intended to free lost souls. One of these patients had been particularly notorious for practicing bizarre magical rites within the hospital's walls, believing these rituals could summon spirits. The detective interviewed the grandchildren of the hospital staff. They shared strange stories about a forbidden room inside the hospital that no one dared enter. It seemed that there were rumors suggesting that this individual had tried to use the room for dark, occult rituals. Based on these stories, the detective's theory began to take shape. Perhaps there was a connection between the ancient curse linked to the hospital and the disappearances happening now at house number 14. It was like a closed loop, with the restless spirits trapped in the house, returning to haunt anyone who dared to live there. As the investigation progressed, the detective began feeling like this hypothesis was seeping into the heart of the case. He could almost hear strange sounds at night, even when he was alone in the room. Could the ancient curse be the reason why people kept disappearing? Dinosaur surveillance technology using humans as samples one day? While continuing his investigation, the detective uncovered new details about one of the people who had disappeared from the house. This individual worked for a highly secretive tech company specializing in advanced research on virtual reality and human brain interaction. The detective continued to interrogate this person's colleagues and found that the company was working on highly classified technology to test human brains using advanced virtual reality devices. The detective deduced that these experiments could be linked to the happenings at house number 14. Perhaps the company had been testing new technologies on individuals confined to that room, which might have caused their disappearance. The theory was that these people had been trapped in their minds using advanced technology, unable to escape. The detective reached out to several experts in the fields of technology and artificial intelligence. They confirmed that some companies were indeed developing systems that merged the human brain with virtual reality in such a way that individuals could live inside digital environments. The challenge for the detective was finding the link between this technology and the missing people and whether these experiments were responsible for their disappearance. A large government conspiracy. The detective began noticing something strange about the way the government was handling the case related to house number 14. There were signs that some government officials were interfering with the investigation. One day, the detective received a mysterious threat warning him to stay away from the case. The messages were cryptic, hinting at a conspiracy surrounding the house, where sensitive information was being hidden about its past. Undeterred, the detective started searching through old government archives and classified records. He found references to a secret project that had used this house as a test site, with people in the community being examined as part of this project. The greatest challenge for the detective was uncovering the truth amid the enormous pressure from government authorities. He had to carefully navigate the risks and challenges that stood in his way. Mental effects from unknown materials. As the detective began experiencing strange symptoms during his stay at the house, he began to suspect that something in the environment around the house might have psychological effects. He began experiencing constant headaches and strange dizziness. He felt as though his mind had become muddled, and the longer he stayed in the house, the worse the effects became. The detective decided to conduct tests on the air quality, suspecting that there might be chemicals or other substances in the air. He called in a team of environmental chemistry experts to test the air, but they found no harmful or toxic substances. A new idea began to form in the detective's mind. Could these mental effects be caused by something otherworldly? Was there an invisible force affecting his mind and making him experience these phenomena in a way that intertwined with reality? As he continued his investigation, the challenges intensified. New evidence would appear only to vanish over time, but the more he got closer to the truth, the more bizarre and unexplainable events kept happening around him. Shadows that never leave evening was slowly falling over the small town, and the fog crept between the streets as if it carried secrets no one dared to uncover. Detective Colin Hammerford sat silently in his office, staring at the wall opposite him, where a large map of the old neighborhood hung. At its center, house number 14 was marked with a red circle. In front of him were stacked reports, handwritten letters, and scattered testimonies from neighbors, but none of them brought closure. Despite weeks of investigation, he had failed to present a single solid explanation. Every theory collapsed the moment he tried to test it against reason. Yet one feeling never left him: the house was hiding something, not only from its residents but from time itself. On the final day before the case was officially closed, Colin decided to visit the abandoned house one last time. There was no order for this, only an inner urge he couldn't suppress. He stood before the front door, holding his flashlight, while the wind whistled through the dry pine trees. The house stood still, too still, as though its walls breathed in silence. He stepped in cautiously. The wooden floors creaked oddly beneath his feet, and the walls whispered in a voice only those who had stayed too long could hear. He made his way to the northern room, the epicenter of all suspicion. There, he noticed something he had missed before: small lines etched precisely into the wood, like ancient symbols stretching across the upper corner of the wall. He approached and touched them with his fingers. For a moment, he felt dizzy, as if the room's gravity had shifted. He was not alone. Behind him, he sensed movement. He turned abruptly, but the room was empty. He stood motionless, listening. Nothing except a silence heavier than the air itself. Later, in his official report, he wrote, "I've visited this place more than once, but the final night was different. There's a presence that cannot be measured by instruments or blink of an eye." No one was ever sure if they were seeing the real world or something else entirely. Despite all the theories and investigations, the truth behind house number 41 remained elusive. No one knows what happened to Elias Verne, the missing people, or why the house is so inexplicably cursed. Theories came and went, but none could truly explain the house's mysteries. The investigation was closed, but the case remains unsolved, and every year, the town of Orlbine holds a vigil outside house number 41. The mystery endures, and the whispers about the house continue to spread. Subscribe to Mystery Street for more unsolved mysteries. Join us as we continue to explore the unknown and seek the truth in a world full of secrets.